Hi, thank you for the thoughtful conversation. My name is Rahawal. I'm with Human Rights First. I wanted to follow up on the Syrian refugee question. Former DHS Secretary Chertoff said that, talking about biometrics, in fact, biometrics are run on Syrian refugees, and it's the most rigorous vetting process that we have. Are you open to reconsidering the possibility of letting in more Syrian refugees if you can be convinced that it can be done so safely? I know Condi Rice, former Secretary of State, said that we're sending a bad signal, one that could play into ISIS propaganda by blocking all Syrian refugees. And General Jack Keane said a similar thing, that,
I've
really...
heard all of it. Yeah. I've heard it. You have to review all the different people who want to do it. I know. None of them, by the way, you'll notice, have any responsibility today for ensuring the safety of the American people. So it's easy to theorize and be an academic about this. And that's not being critical of academics. They have a role. But they don't have any responsibility. So, when the FBI director tells me he can do it, then I'll reconsider. But not until then. Mike Chertoff used to have my job. He used to be U.S. Attorney for New Jersey, my old job. And he was DHS Secretary. And he's a really bright, smart guy. But he has no responsibility today for doing what needs to be done. And it's easy to say those things. And people on television want you to say them. Because it's the politically correct thing to say today. That's the politically correct thing to say. Believe me, I've seen the emails I've gotten since I said what I said, and the Facebook posts and all the rest of that stuff. I'm not, deaf, dumb, and blind. The politically correct thing to say would be that. I'm not saying it because I have a responsibility. And by the way, the federal government has a responsibility to let me know what's going on in my state as governor. And this administration doesn't inform governors when they place refugees in their state. Now, most people don't. I was on some program last week, and I said that. They said, that's impossible. I said, no, actually, it's happening. And, the president, when we were all on the phone with him last week, told the governors, when that issue was raised to the president, he said, well, we'll try to do better. That's wonderfully assuring if you're a governor of a state. Fact is, the person who has the responsibility today, the primary responsibility for telling us what law enforcement's capability is at the federal level, is the director of the FBI. The Attorney General, I think, has been relatively quiet about this. The director of the FBI has spoken out, and he's spoken out before Congress that it cannot happen. They don't have the wherewithal in their databases at the moment to be able to effectively do this. So, that to me is determinative. It's only not determinative if your priorities are different. Like if your priority is to win a Nobel Peace Prize, then say, okay. That's your priority. What you want is to get a pat on the back from the world opinion shapers, then say otherwise. But if your responsibility is to protect the lives of the people that you represent, and you have the top law enforcement official in the country saying, I can't vet them, it doesn't seem to me to be a hard decision. It only becomes hard when we decide to get all politically correct with each other. We're sending signals. Well, what happens if one of these folks comes in and winds up participating in an attack that kills Americans? What kind of signals are we sending then? Because I can guarantee you there'll be all kinds of people in this town who had the opinion to let folks in who will run for the hills. Or will all of a sudden have qualifiers that, well, wait a second. I said if this and that and this and that. And when you're in charge, when you have to be responsible, you don't get to run. And you don't get to hide. And you shouldn't run and hide now. This is my view because I have the responsibility. And I've had the responsibility as a law enforcement officer too. So, when the FBI director tells me that he can do this better and more effectively, then that changes the equation. But up to this moment, we don't have that. We have a bunch of used-to-bes who are saying it. That's fine. They have a role to play. Their role is to write and go on television and say things. And then when something goes the other way, they go on television and say the other way because they don't have the responsibility to do it. So, I have a great deal of respect for all the people that you named and the ones that you were going to continue to name before I interrupted you. I'm sure I have great respect for them too. But man, they're not the ones who are responsible. And And I'm telling you that that's one of my biggest problems with the president. He is responsible. He should know better. And he should listen to the people he put in charge. I can't imagine he knows more than Jim Comey about this issue. I can't imagine a scenario under which he understands and knows this more than Jim Comey. And so, you know, sometimes, like I said in the speech, leadership's about listening. Even if it's contrary to exactly what you want, you need to listen. And I will tell you that if something does happen where American lives are lost, the American public both will and should be relentlessly unforgiving of those who are responsible for having done the politically correct thing and not listened to the people who knew more than they did.
Governor Christie, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to have you.